Have you ever danced until you dropped, literally until you couldn't stand anymore? In the annals of history, there are moments that defy explanation, events that baffle the minds of even the most astute historians. One such event is the Dancing Plague of 1518, a bizarre episode of mass hysteria that gripped the city of Strasbourg, France. Our tale begins with a woman, Frau Trophea. One sunny July day in 1518, she stepped onto the cobblestone streets of Strasbourg and began to dance. There was no music, no celebration, no apparent reason for her spontaneous display, yet she danced with an intensity that was both captivating and unsettling. As hours turned into days, Frau Trophea danced without rest. Her shoes wore thin, her clothes drenched with sweat, but her fervor remained undimmed. The townsfolk watched in bewilderment, their curiosity gradually turning into concern. But the spectacle was far from over. This was merely the opening act of a performance that was about to take a bizarre twist. What started as a solitary act of zeal soon turned infectious. One by one, the citizens of Strasbourg began to join Frau Trophea in her dance. It was as if an invisible musician was playing a melody that only they could hear, a tune so irresistible that it compelled them to dance. And dance they did, without rest, without respite, consumed by an inexplicable frenzy that seemed to have taken hold of their very souls. Within a week, the streets of Strasbourg were filled with hundreds of dancers, their bodies swaying to the mysterious melody of history. The dance had become an epidemic, a contagion that was spreading like wildfire, leaving the city in a state of chaos and confusion. Through it all, Frau Trophea continued to dance, seemingly oblivious to the pandemonium her actions had triggered. She was the epicenter of this peculiar outbreak, the first to succumb to the irresistible rhythm of the unseen tune. Frau Trophea, a woman whose dance started an epidemic, a phenomenon that defies explanation even today. As we delve deeper into this mystifying event, we are left wondering, what compelled Frau Trophea to dance? And why did so many follow her lead? The answers to these questions lie hidden in the mysterious melody of history. What started as a lone woman's dance soon turned into a manic performance that swept through the city. In the heart of Strasbourg, Frau Trophea began a dance, a simple solitary movement that would soon evolve into a spectacle that held the city captive. In a matter of days, what began as a single person's act of dancing grew exponentially. The streets filled with people, all swaying, stomping and spinning in an uncontrollable dance of despair. It was as though an invisible puppeteer had taken control, pulling the strings of the townsfolk, making them dance with an intensity that was both captivating and horrifying. Men, women, children, the young and the old alike, were caught in this frenzy, their bodies twisting and turning in an endless dance that seemed to have no rhythm or reason. As the dance continued, the toll it took on the dancers became increasingly apparent. Their faces, once flushed with the excitement of the dance, now bore the signs of fatigue and distress. Their bodies, once agile and rhythmic, now moved with a desperate struggle, as if each step was a battle against an unseen force. The city of Strasbourg was not filled with the sound of laughter and joyous cheers that usually accompany a dance. Instead, it echoed with the heavy breathing of the dancers, their feet pounding against the cobblestones, the eerie music of exhaustion and despair. The dance was relentless. It continued day and night in the heat of the midday sun and the cool of the moonlit nights. The dancers, it seemed, were trapped in a trance, their bodies moving even when their strength was all but gone. And as the days turned into weeks, the dance claimed its victims. Exhaustion led to collapse, and for some the dance ended in the cruel finality of heart attacks, and even death. In the midst of summer, Strasbourg turned into a city of dancers, dancing not out of joy, but seemingly out of compulsion and despair. This was not a dance of celebration, but a dance of despair, a dance that held a city captive and left a mark on history that continues to puzzle us today. Imagine city officials faced with a dancing plague deciding the cure was more dancing. Yes, you heard it right. As strange as it sounds, that was the course of action taken by the authorities in Strasbourg in the summer of 1518. The local authorities, completely baffled by the dancing plague, were at their wits' end. They had never encountered a situation like this before and were unsure of how to handle it. After consulting with physicians and scholars, they arrived at a decision. The consensus was that the affected individuals were suffering from hot blood, and that they needed to dance it out of their systems. So, they did what anyone in the 16th century would do when faced with a dancing plague. They encouraged it. They decided to build a wooden stage in the heart of the city. But it wasn't just any stage. It was a stage specifically designed for the afflicted to dance their malady away. It wasn't enough to just provide a stage. They needed music and rhythm to keep the dancers going. So they hired musicians. Musicians with their flutes, drums, and pipes were brought in from all corners of the city. They played day and night, providing a constant rhythm for the dancers. And the city officials didn't stop there. They even hired professional dancers. These dancers were intended to help guide the afflicted in their dance, to keep them moving, to make sure they didn't stop until they had danced the sickness away. The authorities truly believed that they were doing the right thing. They thought that by encouraging the dancing, they were helping the affected individuals to recover. They were convinced that this was the best course of action, the only way to cure this inexplicable disease. But, as we now know, their well-intended actions had the opposite effect. The continuous dancing led to more exhaustion, more sickness, and tragically more death. The dancing epidemic did not wane but instead grew more intense and deadly. Their response, though well-meaning, only fueled the dancing epidemic, leading to more exhaustion and death. The dancing plague of 1518 remains one of the most bizarre and tragic events in human history, a testament to the peculiar turns that history can take. What could cause hundreds of people to dance uncontrollably until they collapsed or even died? This question has puzzled historians and scientists alike for centuries. Over the years, numerous theories have tried to explain this enigmatic event, known as the dancing plague of 1518. One popular theory suggests that mass hysteria, a phenomenon where a group of people exhibit similar physical symptoms due to a psychological disturbance, was to blame. In a time where superstitions ran high, and the belief in curses and witchcraft was prevalent, the fear of such could have easily spread amongst the population, causing an outbreak of uncontrollable dancing. Another theory points to religious fervor. The people of the time were deeply religious, and dancing was often part of religious rituals. Some suggest that the dancers were performing a form of penance, driven by a deep-seated fear of divine wrath, leading them to dance until they dropped. A more scientific explanation proposes ergot poisoning as the culprit. Ergot is a fungus that grows on rye and wheat, common grains in the diet of the people of Strasbourg in the 16th century. Consuming ergot-contaminated grains can lead to hallucinations, spasms, and other physical reactions that could mimic the symptoms of the dancing plague. Then there's the theory of stress-induced psychosis. The people of Strasbourg were living in a time of great hardship, with famine, disease, and high taxes. The immense stress could have triggered a psychological break, causing them to dance in a trance-like state. While each of these theories provides a fascinating glimpse into the possible causes of the dancing plague of 1518, none can definitively explain the event in its entirety. Some combine elements of these theories, suggesting a case of mass hysteria fueled by religious fervor and exacerbated by ergot poisoning and extreme stress. While each theory provides a piece of the puzzle, the full picture of what caused the dancing plague of 1518 remains elusive. The Dancing Plague of 1518, a historical event that continues to baffle and intrigue us. In the heart of Strasbourg, France, over 5 centuries ago, a peculiar phenomenon unfolded. A woman named Frau Trophea began a dance. Not a dance of joy or celebration, but one that seemed to be fueled by an unseen force. She danced without rest, without pause, in a trance-like state that drew the attention of the townsfolk. This solitary dance, however, soon turned into a contagion. One by one, people of Strasbourg began to join Frau Trophea, as if compelled by an invisible puppeteer. The streets were filled with dancers, their bodies writhing and twisting in a spectacle that was as mesmerizing as it was terrifying. The authorities of the time were as baffled as the onlookers. Their response was a mix of fear, confusion, and desperation. They believed the dancing to be a curse or divine punishment, and in a misguided attempt to cure the perceived affliction, they encouraged more dancing. Bands were hired, stages were built, and the dance continued unabated. The physical toll, however, was devastating. People danced until they collapsed, their bodies succumbing to exhaustion, dehydration, and in some cases, even death. Yet the dancing did not cease. It continued for months, until it abruptly ended, leaving behind a city in shock and a mystery that persists to this day. Numerous theories have been proposed to explain this bizarre event. Some suggest that it was a case of mass hysteria, a psychological phenomenon where a group of people exhibit similar physical symptoms without a clear cause. Others speculate that it may have been caused by ergotism, a condition resulting from the consumption of grains contaminated with a certain type of fungus. While we may never fully understand what caused this bizarre event, it remains a fascinating dance with history, reminding us of the strange and unpredictable nature of our past.